Please welcome Women in Product board member, Julie Wenah.
Hi, I'm Julie Wenah, Associate General Counsel for Civil Rights at Facebook and board member of Women in Product. And I am thrilled to welcome you all to day 2 of the Women in Product Conference 2021. As a reminder, for accessibility options, including closed captioning, please visit the accessibility section in the conference app. Special thanks to Blend, our accessibility sponsor. I hope you enjoyed the keynote, breakouts, and interactive sessions yesterday. And I especially hope you are able to meet at least one new person. Connecting with other women PMs is important to advancing your career and getting the support and advice to take your career to the next level. This morning, we're going to focus on the future. As most of you know, AI is a core technology that is transforming digital products. AI has the ability to power and transform the future. And the speakers we have today will delve into those possibilities. Our first speaker, Rana Kaliouby, is a pioneer in emotional AI. Early on, she asked the fundamental question, what if technology could understand people in the same way that we understand each other? Rana is the co-founder and CEO of Affectiva, an author of the inspiring book, Girl Decoded, a scientist's quest to reclaim our humanity by bringing emotional intelligence to technology, which is about her journey from Cairo to Cambridge and beyond. Rana is a passionate advocate for humanizing technology, ethics in AI, and diversity. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Rana Kaliouby.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rana Kaliouby, Affectiva's co-founder and CEO, and I'm on a mission to humanize technology. I'm so excited to be here with you all today because the way I think about it, there's so much happening in the AI space, and there's so much happening around product and product management. And if you think of a Venn diagram, the intersection of those two areas is really exciting. And there's a lot of potential and a lot of demand for product folks who really understand and are excited about the AI space. So I've been on a mission to humanize technology for the past 20 plus years. It all started way back when, I grew up around in Cairo. I'm originally from Egypt. Both my parents are technologists, so I grew up surrounded by technology. And I was always fascinated by how technology changes the way we humans connect with one another. And that's been a common thread throughout my career. I studied computer science as an undergraduate. And at the time, my career goal was to become faculty, and I wanted to be an academic. So I moved to Cambridge University, where I did my PhD. And I was one of the very, very first people who explored this idea of emotionally intelligent machines. You know, if you think of human intelligence, your IQ is important, your cognitive intelligence is really important, but actually your emotional intelligence, your ability to understand and identify other people's emotions and be able to act and react to it is really key. We know from years and years of research that people who have higher emotional intelligence quotients, EQs, tend to do better in life. They're better leaders, they're more persuasive human beings, they can motivate people to change their behaviors, they're better partners, and they're better professionals as well. And I believe that that is true for technology as well, especially technology that is so deeply ingrained in our lives. I mean, if you think about AI is becoming ubiquitous. It's becoming mainstream. It's deeply ingrained in many aspects of our lives. Sometimes we don't even realize it, right? And it's taking on roles that were traditionally done by humans, assisting with our productivity, helping with our healthcare, driving our cars, maybe hiring our next coworker. And I believe strongly that given that technology and AI is so deeply ingrained in our lives, it has to have social and emotional intelligence as well. And we need this almost new social contract between humans and machines. And so I've been at the forefront of kind of envisioning and designing and deploying these technologies. After Cambridge University and towards the end of my PhD, I had the opportunity to meet this MIT professor very serendipitously, Professor Rosalind Picard. She was visiting Cambridge and I had been following her work for years. She wrote the book Affective Computing, which posited that machines needed to have emotions. And we met, and she said, "Why don't you join me as a postdoc at MIT Media Lab?" And of course, for me, that was a dream come true. And instead of moving back to Egypt, I actually commuted between Cairo and Boston for like 3 years in a row because my husband at the time and my kids were based in Cairo, but I had to, I took on this postdoc position at MIT. And so there was a little bit of a craziness for a few years where I was doing the back and forth commute. But the project that brought me over to MIT was essentially deploying our technology, which uses computer vision and deep learning and machine learning and gobs and gobs and gobs of data to understand the facial expressions and the nuanced emotions that people express. And I want to dissect that for a second. If you look at, and you will all know that because you're in product and you have to manage a whole load of stakeholders, which can look very different, right? The software engineers and the actual people who are building the product versus the kind of the executive team at a company, and you have to manage all of these various stakeholders. So you will all be attuned to what I'm about to say, which is essentially only 10% of how we communicate is in the actual choice of words we use. 90% is nonverbal, and it's split equally between your facial expressions, your body posture, right? Your hand gestures, your vocal intonations. How fast are you speaking? How much energy is there in your voice? And I'm sure you've sat in meetings after meetings where, somebody might be saying, okay, I think that's the right path forward, or that's the right decision for this particular product launch. I don't know. But their tone is skeptical, or their facial expressions are basically telling you that, you know what, they're not quite on board. Well, that's a red flag, and you need to manage through that. So our nonverbal signals are really important in how we connect and communicate with one another. And of course, I had this realization back when I was at Cambridge doing my PhD. Our machines today are completely oblivious to these nonverbal signals. They just look at the words we're using to connect and communicate, and they're blind, they're emotion blind. They don't see any of our facial expressions or our vocal intonations. And so I'm on this mission to quantify these nonverbal signals and then make them available to our human machine interactions in a way that bridges the gap between human and machines. And there are so many applications of this technology. The very first application we explored, which is the project that brought me over to MIT, was to help autistic kids read and understand these signals. So a lot of individuals on the autism spectrum struggle with reading and understanding these emotion signals. And so we built a Google Glass-like device. This was way before Google Glass existed. And we hooked it up to a little camera that then processed all of the images of the person you're interacting with. And it would give you real-time feedback. It would say, oh, this person so-and-so looks really bored. You should change it up a little bit. And we essentially built it as an assistive device for autistic kids. But while at MIT, we started to get a lot of commercial interest in the technology. Across many different industries. And that provided the impetus for starting Affectiva 12 years ago when we spun out of MIT. And so we're on this mission to humanize technology. I fundamentally believe that our human-machine interfaces are going to morph, and they're becoming more conversational. We see that with Alexa and Siri and Google Home, etc. They're becoming more perceptual. And I fundamentally believe that they ought to become more empathetic. And again, you are all in product. And so you understand the importance of having empathy in terms of how you design and develop and deploy technology. You have to have empathy. You have to think about the user and how they, their points of views and their perspectives and how they see the world and the pain points they face. And I think it's absolutely true for technology as well. Our devices have to have more empathy, and they have to have emotional intelligence. And that has applications across industries. So at Affectiva, we are focused on a number of key and exciting areas. One is helping companies and marketers and content creators understand the emotional connection their consumers have with their products, with their services, and with their video content. So we work with 28% of the Fortune Global 500 companies. We're deployed in 90 countries around the world. To date, we have looked at almost 60,000 video ads and movie trailers and TV clips. We've also helped companies understand the emotional engagement their consumers have with their products. And that's an area that I think is really interesting too. If you, with your product hat on, can you really quantify how people experienced your product? We've done a number of proof of concepts where with this technology, we were able to exactly pinpoint when people were confused while using a particular product, when they were delighted, right? Like when you're opening the box for the first time or you're experiencing an app for the first time. Is it confusing? Is it delightful? Is it frustrating? Where are these friction points and can you remove them? And that's so hard to do if you're just going to ask a person about their experience. You use an app and then at the end of it, it's like, oh, rate this app on, 5 stars, 4 stars. Well, that doesn't really acknowledge that oftentimes it's an emotional journey, right? And there are various points across that experience that could be positive, could be negative. And you as a product designer and a product owner want to know these different friction points. So a lot of organizations use our technology to really quantify this visceral reaction to their products and their services and their content. We also do a lot of work kind of reimagining what a human machine interface looks like. And in particular, in the automotive industry, we're building interior cabin sensors that can understand if a driver is distracted or drowsy, right? Like, are you doing this while driving? Well, guess what? You're distracted. Are you falling asleep? Are you distracted because your kids are in the back seat, like fighting, right? Well, a lot of us have experienced that. So we're reimagining what the future of mobility looks like, not just for the driver, but other occupants in the vehicle. And of course, that has application in the future of mobility when we start to see semi-autonomous and someday fully autonomous vehicles like robo-taxis, et cetera. Over the last year, a lot of the technology I'm building and the team's working on has become front and center because a lot of our connection has migrated to becoming a digital connection. And again, we're missing a lot of these nuances and it's really hard. Like, for example, I'm presenting to all of you, I don't get to see you. Whereas if we were in the same room, I would get a sense of the energy in the room and I'd be able to riff off it and build on it and adapt to it. You can't do that oftentimes when you are, presenting to an audience remotely, using the platforms that exist today. So I think the pandemic has actually accelerated the adoption of technology like ours, like artificial emotional intelligence or emotion AI. And we're going to see that applied to video conferencing and telehealth and online learning. So I'm really excited about that. But I'm not naive, right? This technology has a lot of potential to do good in the world, but it also has, it can be used to discriminate against people. It could be used in profiling. It could be used to manipulate people. I mean, your emotions are very, very personal information. And so I'm a huge advocate for the ethical development and deployment of this technology and AI in general. The ethical development has to do with mitigating data and algorithmic bias, and it's an area that we spend a lot of time on. I have to say, for all of you who are product owners, if you are not prioritizing and if you're not being intentional about mitigating biases in your algorithms, and then ensuring that your engineers and your key stakeholders care about that, like that's a missed opportunity to do good. And so again, I encourage you as women in product to really embrace diversity and equity and inclusion and prioritize data and mitigating data and algorithmic bias and ensuring the diversity of this technology and the robustness of it, because if you make that a priority, if you make that a key kind of requirement for the product, guess what? It starts to proliferate across the whole organization. And then just finally, I do want to highlight that, and I talk about that a lot in Girl Decoded, my book, which is my memoir. The paperback version just launched a few weeks ago. I talk about my experience and my struggles, primarily overcoming this voice of inner doubt. As a woman in technology, as a woman entrepreneur, as a woman leader in the AI space, it took many years to overcome the voice of inner doubt, this imposter syndrome, and I use journaling as a way to rebuttal that. I also make sure that I have a number of mentors and sponsors that I can tap into and who cheer me on when I need it the most. And so I encourage, it's awesome that you are part of this amazing network. Make sure that you build these relationships, cultivate them, and pay it forward. It's something that I'm also very passionate about. I feel very passionate that we need more women around the table. We need more diverse voices around the table as we think about the future of AI and bring emotion AI, not only to reimagine our human machine interfaces, but fundamentally to reimagine human to human connections. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Rana. What an amazing journey. Our unique perspectives and experiences allow us to come to the table in building responsibly by valuing varied life experiences. Next up, we have a panel of incredible product leaders who are building AI solutions today in a diverse set of industries. These women will share their perspectives on incorporating AI into products and how to think about the opportunities presented. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Madhurima Khandelwal, who has led large teams of professional analysts, data scientists, and researchers at American Express for over 15 years. Currently, she leads the charter to build and drive state-of-the-art AI capabilities and solutions. She is a flag bearer of inclusion and diversity for Amex India and is passionate about creating a culture of inclusiveness and empowerment for all of her colleagues. Second, I'd love to welcome to the stage Anna Grace, who was the Director of Product Management for AI at Facebook and a Women in Product board member. She joined Facebook in 2020, where she leads advanced AI initiatives in commerce. Previously, she held product leadership roles at Best Buy, GoDaddy, Walmart, and Macy's. Third, I'd love to welcome to the stage Navrina Singh, who is the founder and CEO of Credo AI and a technology leader with over 18 plus years experience in enterprise SaaS, AI, and mobile. She's an executive board member of Mozilla, guiding their trustworthy AI charter. In addition, she's a young global leader with the World Economic Forum and was on their future council for AI guiding policies and regulations in responsible AI. Finally, we have our amazing moderator, Farah Abdallah Akoum, who is the Senior Group Manager at Zillow, currently leading the product teams responsible for the search and discovery experience across platforms, helping buyers and renters find their dream homes. Prior to that, she managed the AI teams responsible for personalized search, Zestimate, and conversational AI. And now I'll hand it over to Farah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Farah Abdallah Akoum, Head of Search and Discovery at Zillow Group and member of Women in Product Seattle chapter. Welcome to Building Solutions for the Future Women in AI session. I'm really excited today to learn from three wonderful panelists about how AI is accelerating new product development. What are the challenges? And definitely, what does it take to succeed as an AI product manager? Please join me in welcoming Anna Grace, Director of Product for Artificial Intelligence at Facebook and member of the Board Directors for Women in Product. Madhurima Khandelwal, Vice President, American Express and Head of AI Lab. Navrina Singh, founder and CEO of Credo AI and board member at Mozilla. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited, first and foremost, to learn from you about all the amazing work for leveraging AI to shape the future of product innovation in your industries. Can you share with us some examples of these new applications and opportunities?
Absolutely. So I oversee Facebook's advanced AI efforts for commerce, and we believe that the future of commerce is going to be bespoke, and that will be powered by AI. So for buyers, we're using AI to understand people and the social fabric that exists between them and connect them to products they love. We want to make shopping more convenient, more accessible, more personalized across our family of apps. And to facilitate serendipitous shopping by making everything you see, every image, every video, every conversation, everything you might see in the real world, shoppable. To make online shopping just as social as physical shopping with your friends. To be able to suggest to you what to wear today based on what's in your closet, maybe the weather in your area or an important event that's happening. I'm super excited about generation and the ability to unlock a host of commerce experience in that space. For example, the ability to describe your dream dress and then digitally manifest an image of that dress that can be used to find the closest match in our catalog or even send it off to be custom made for you. The ability to generate 3D models that you'll never have to go into a fitting room again. Can you imagine? Generating review summaries so that you won't be sucked into that vortex of reading review after review after review, only to understand the basic pros and cons of a product. And then for sellers, the ability to generate automatic storefronts and videos for them to showcase their products, or providing really powerful tools for sellers to be able to connect with the customers who need their product. It's just an incredible time, and the future of AI is an incredible it's an incredible opportunity that we get to help create it, and of course a great responsibility as well.
I think for American Express, as we speak today, we are clocking at 171 years of backing our customers, our colleague, as well as our communities. And I think with AI, we have been able to generate exceptional products and services, which we are known for, even more seamlessly as well as efficiently. I think to draw a few examples for you, just to bring you to life how AI is embedded in all of the functions that we do, I'm going to start with acquisitions, which is really bringing in new card members on the American Express family and really serving up the right message to the right customer at the right time through our digital channels really excites them with our offerings. Talking about servicing, we use natural language processing capabilities to provide help to our servicing colleagues so that they can understand and interpret customer interactions better. Fraud and credit risk, this is where our best-in-class deep learning models exist, where we're able to detect fraudulent transactions at checkout. We're able to provide decisions on approval of card accounts. We're able to determine credit limits of our customers. And finally, in operations, I think with AI, we're automating a lot of the manual processes today and freeing up time for our colleagues to really spend more time into complex analysis. To take an example, we built an internal solution for vendor management where through AI, we're able to detect duplicate invoices, which used to take many, many hours for our colleagues to be able to do so with much higher accuracy. And I think in future state, we can continue to build solutions in customer experiences, in operations, in servicing, but not so much about creating efficiencies. I think it's really to create that foundational next generation product and services leveraging AI.
Wow, so great to hear about the use cases at Facebook and American Express. I'm the founder of Credo AI, and coming to this conversation with a very different perspective, where we look across different industry segments and the use cases that machine learning is enabling, and really asking ourselves the questions: are we putting the right controls in place? Are we putting the right governance in place so that, as Anna mentioned, are these technologies being developed responsibly? And we actually have a core thesis that technology should always be in service of humanity. So for us at Credo AI, it's really around how can we bring human oversight and accountability to these machine learning technologies, which, as you've heard from Madhurima and Anna, have become pervasive, whether it is choosing a dress to wear or thinking about the next credit card transaction or doing, conversational AI to support your back office needs. So let me give you a couple of examples where responsibility as well as governance of these technologies is really becoming critical. Now, the first example, I'll take it from finance and banking space. Organizations, especially financial services, are using credit card transactions to come up with risk scores so that you can actually figure out for a particular user what is the risk profile of that particular user. And based on that risk score, be able to give them, let's say, higher credit limit or be able to give them loan for whatever applications they want to use it for. The question then begs is, are these machine learning algorithms by mistake, unintentionally using protected class variables as an example? So are we looking at the profiles of the users? Is it a female who happens to be a mom because based on her credit card transaction, she has been buying a lot of items for kids? And can that gender as a parameter influence the risk score that gets assigned to that user? I'll take example of what Anna mentioned in terms of being able to pick out your dresses. And if you extend that to computer vision and facial recognition, what are the kind of guardrails we are putting in place so that your systems are able to not only be inclusive but also look across different demographics and not leave out a brown person who happens to be a woman from your computer vision system? So one of the core questions we've been asking ourselves at Credo AI is, given that this is going to be a transformational technology becoming pervasive across all industry segments and impacting 16 trillion of GDP growth in the next 10 years, how are we going to ensure that these are governed and controlled in a way that it continues to serve humanity?
Wow. This is really a fascinating discussion. So we heard about all of these great opportunities. And by the way, Anna, Zillow is also on the charter of using AI for improving shopping in the home for your dream home. And we saw in the pandemic for COVID how 3D touring has been key for people to unlock their next best chapter, right? But we also heard all of these challenges around this new field of AI. So what are organizations today doing to address these challenges concretely and improve the supports for privacy, inclusions, and other social issues?
Yeah, I think, I can start by saying that ultimately we have to stay true to maintaining customers' trust as well as maintaining transparency in the space of privacy as well as data security. To take an example from American Express, no matter where we collect data from, it has to abide by our data protection principles. We have these principles covering how we are capturing data, storing it, using it, deleting it, processing it. And we also power up our online privacy statements as you use our websites, as you use our apps, so that you're very well versed with, as a visitor to our applications, what exactly we're capturing about you and how we're really using that information. While all of this is said and done very well, often what is important to keep in mind is there needs to be a human oversight. AI solutions, the fear is, should not be running unattended. And therefore, again, in American Express, we have multi-tier approach to govern and review everything that is built as an AI solution, be it the person who is building it which we call as first line. So these are modelers, these are committees created in the line of business who would review this solution. But we also have second line reviews. So be it the compliance teams or fair lending teams or even model risk management, who are going through documentation in great detail, who are going through the techniques that are being used, and also making sure that these are being monitored. So once you have put it, in production and it's running, you have to make sure over time it continues to deliver what it was intending to do. And finally, I'll say that, there is a space, what you talked about in terms of inclusion, and making sure that there is no discrimination happening from the perspective of the outcomes of the solution as well. So, be it fair lending laws that are being followed, be it providing training to the individuals who are creating these AI solutions to be well versed with what are the fair lending laws and how they're being incorporated into the AI solutions is imperative to solve for the challenges at hand.
It's Madhurima said it so beautifully, and I couldn't agree more with her. I'll just add a slightly different perspective, because when Credo AI gets approached by organizations, whether you're in government sector, finance and banking, high tech, or in employment, we really look at it holistically from three core lenses. The first lens is accountability. And the way that you can bring accountability, not only in the processes and the tools that you're using, but in the decisioning around these low impact, medium impact, high impact scenarios, really is grounded on a multi-stakeholder team. So now more than ever, I would say the need for diverse perspectives in the design, development, deployment, and the management of these machine learning applications is super critical. I've been in tech now for 2 decades, grew up in companies like Qualcomm and Microsoft, and I can, say that this is the first time that I'm recognizing that the tools and the technologies we are building could drastically shift the way that we work, live, play, and it becomes really a socio-technical problem rather than a technical problem that we've been also used to. And that's why bringing this human oversight and accountability is super critical in enforcing accountability at every stage of the organization, at every level of the organization. The second thing that we really focus on is transparency. And I think this transparency is not only the internal transparency that you can create in terms of which vendor models are you using in case you are going with third-party vendor models. If you are sourcing data from different sources, where do those sources come from? Who's vetted it? Are they demographically diverse? Are they really the high quality bar that you absolutely need for artificial intelligence and machine learning application? So really having the right checks and balances in place to build that transparency within the enterprise and then externally with your stakeholders. Now, those stakeholders could be your customers. So how are you making these decisions? Where actually are you using machine learning versus not? Because now everything is getting clubbed around, oh, this is ML, but when you actually unpack it, it is a traditional statistical system. So having that transparent conversation with your customers around where truly you're using machine learning, where you're actually creating learning systems that are actively learning from the market data and getting informed is really critical. And then also, I think transparency with your regulators, your policymakers, and your third-party auditors. I think that is going to become even more critical area as we move forward because of the incoming regulations in different areas, because of the policies, whether it's enterprise policies or potential regulations in your use cases. So for us, I would say that, really focus on accountability, transparency, and then, and the intentional decision-making. Are you truly using machine learning or not? And what is the inventory of models that you're using? What is the risk profile associated with the models that you're using? And having that very transparently shared across the organizational, being intentional about the decision-making you're doing around those is super critical.
So interesting that you both mentioned something around human oversight. Now, this is becoming more and more challenging because we know that we don't have enough women and people from underrepresented minorities in the IT workspace let alone in AI. What is your advice for product manager who in the audience who are interested today to lead in the AI space? For them to succeed, do they have to develop like different skills? How can they go forward and join the revolution?
Oh, that's such a great question. Well, first, I would share that I don't come from a computer science background. I am not an engineer. And although I have run e-commerce companies sort of end to end of customer experience, I have had very light experience in AI before I joined Facebook. My degree is actually in sociology, and it may surprise you to hear that I actually think that that's been a great asset for me. Because before we can teach computers to think, we need to understand more fully what it is to be human, and my degree has really helped me there. So first of all, I would tell you, don't be intimidated by the number of PhDs in the field if you aren't one. When I joined Facebook, I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome because I didn't think that I was qualified to be on the AI team. What I learned is that I bring a lot to the table, and it's really important the things that I can bring. And so instead of feeling intimidated, I decided that I would follow my friend Deb Liu's advice, and instead I became curious. I became curious to learn, curious to grow, curious to figure out how I could contribute. So my advice here is don't be afraid to jump into the space. No one's really an expert. It's really an emerging discipline, and you can get in and you should get involved right now. Next, I think that it's super important for product managers to think big. In many cases, like PMing is about executing known solutions or maturing technologies. But in AI, you're really able to dream new realities. And so a lot of the work that I'm doing in this space is around inspiring teams to imagine what would be the most incredible thing that we could experience, what would be the best thing. And it's really hard when you're grounded in the now, in the reality of right now. But I find that like watching science fiction movies, talking to futurists, like really digging into sort of this future world, gets you into the mindset that anything is possible. And that's where AI really begins to shine.
I think, Anna, you said it so beautifully, and it's such a great question because I'm sure all of us lived through how to master this complex space of AI product. I think I would say that, what is unique about this space is the blend that you need to have where you have the expertise in the technical space, but at the same time, you have to think from a product mindset where you have to think about scale and when you have to think about high impact and you have to think about what do your users really want. And, my advice would be, how do you strike that balance? You might be attracted to a data science problem, which may be unique, but it may not see the adoption because it never had the scale associated with it. And it's very important to be able to strike that balance where you are in the space of AI product. And to the leaders, I would say that we have to be committed to creating a diverse team. It is absolutely must for us to represent the products that we create for the communities that we serve. And we as women, I truly believe we have to lift as we rise. We have to not only create a space on the table, but even encourage to have a voice on the table as well. It is hard, but oftentimes, as you said, we realize that there is a unique perspective that we bring on the table. There are elements that we add to the overall, how we develop the product, which actually take it to the next level. And that's what we feel proud about. And there's no harm in identifying what you want to invest in yourself. That's the best investment we make in ourselves, which is continuously keep learning, don't give up, and there'll be enough around you who will give you that backing when you need.
Wow. It's going to be difficult to top off those learnings from both of you. But, it's interesting, a little bit of a personal journey here. In the AI space, I really didn't want to create a seat on the table for myself because there are so many diverse perspectives, and everywhere that I had participated in, it was closed doors. It wasn't that diversity was encouraged because if you're coming from traditional software and hardware. So I brought my own chair to the table. And the idea there was that now more than ever is going to be important to create that diversity of perspective. So I think for anybody who is looking to move, whether it is from software into product management, or they are planning to move from social sciences to product management, I think about three skills that are really critical in this AI first, data first world. The first one is being okay and having the ability to unlearn. Because as you can imagine, we focus so much on learning and learning about the new field, being curious about the new field. Absolutely, those are like table stakes and hygiene factor. But what becomes really critical in artificial intelligence and machine learning applications is letting go of the set ways of thinking, which have sort of built the previous generation of technology revolutions. So, unlearning really is going to be critical, and I think an important skill set for any product management leader that is looking to make a dent in this field. Because the more quickly you can sort of give up on your old ways of thinking, the more adaptive you can be in this new world. The second area, which I think is super critical, is embracing experimentation. I think more and more within machine learning and artificial intelligence, we are recognizing that unlike the set ways of programming where the outcomes were sort of predetermined, in AI there's a lot of unknowns. So as a product leader, really getting comfortable with A/B testing, testing out your hypotheses, or iterating on it multiple times a day, so that based on the data that you have or the lack thereof, you can be willing to go and experiment with the right set of customers. And being okay to sort of work in that ambiguous space is really critical. And last but not the least, I think that is a core skill set of a good PM is fighting for users and empathy for users. I would say that has further been amplified in the machine learning space. Because again, going back to that, we are moving from a technical product to a socio-technical product, which is going to completely transform every parts of our life. Now is really important to understand what are the core pain points your customers are facing, who is the data provider, where are the data sources coming from. So having that understanding is really critical. And I would say that one of the core skill sets that I look for in hiring PMs is how much are you willing to fight for the customers? How much empathy do you have for the end users and their pain points? And do we really need machine learning to solve for it? So hopefully, as long as you can unlearn, experiment a lot, and more importantly, have the empathy for users, I think you are really set for a great PM career.
Wow, this is really great. So be curious, don't be afraid, lift other, learn, but also unlearn. Let me double down a little bit on the unlearn part. Do you believe that there is a different PM process, product development process when it comes to AI? Or is it kind of like the same thing?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. Well, first of all, I think AI product management is fundamentally the same as general product management. You need to understand the people problems. You need to understand the value of solving those problems and understand, what it means to actually measure that success, that solution, so forth. But I do think there are, some differences. And one thing I would share is, much like mobile first thinking a few years ago, we're now starting to think teach organizations to think AI first. And it can take time, right, for your leadership, for your partners to think this way. So you have to be patient as you're bringing them along. But this sort of mantra of we're thinking AI first, right? How can AI make this better? Also, AI as a field of study is moving really, really quickly, but individual AI research does take time. It's a funny dichotomy. You sort of need to stay on top of everything that's emerging and advancing, but at the same time, when you're actually working on that advanced research, you've got to give yourself time to plan and think and be deliberate about those investments because they're time consuming. So you need to think of solutions in a way that allow them to grow along with the technology. For example, a few years ago, machines couldn't really accurately tell if a person was in a photo. Today, we can tell you that the person's in the photo is wearing like a suede dress with polka dots. Even if half their body is behind a desk, we can tell you that. And we can tell you also that that desk is made out of wood or maybe metal. So I would say next you need to think of AI as concrete little elements of building blocks that you can stack together and mix and match. I call them in our world the AI Commerce Toolkit. And we teach product managers to think in terms of how do you leverage each of these blocks to solve a variety of problems. And the more we make those blocks reusable, so this is super important, you can unlock more and more use cases. So for example, by investing in a common trunk, say around computer vision or NLP, we can serve many, many stakeholders and enable faster technology advancements for everyone.
You know, I love the idea of the building blocks and something that I use pretty extensively in our world as well. I would say that even though the processes have been same, we need to bring in more intentionality to how we are building AI. So a couple of things that we've been, talking to our customers about, and something that I'd worked with at Microsoft as well, is moving from this notion of DevOps to intentional DevOps. Because as you can imagine, right at the design stage, we are so excited about learning about customer pain points, and we spend a lot of time with the customers. But internally within the organizations, we sort of stop leaning on the policy team, the social sciences team, the compliance team to really understand, should we even be embarking on this project? So I think, how do you at the design stage bring in more intentionality by stretching your PM role, which already means bringing different stakeholders together, to now bringing those different stakeholders together across the entire ecosystem. The other example is, as you're moving towards building the different models, training those different models, looking at the outcomes, running experiments, really critical to go back and ask yourself, what was the purpose of this project? Why were we building it in the first place? And are we doing the right things in terms of compliance now more than ever as data is being used? How are our compliance policies? Are they still compliant with GDPR? Are we sourcing the data from the right places? So I think what has become really critical for the PM function is, yes, the process might be the same, but the amount of intentionality, the amount of thoughtfulness, the amount of visibility and transparency that a PM needs to bring to the table has completely amplified. And lastly, I totally believe that PM is going to be the glue that sort of bridges the gap between the technical and the business stakeholders, because this is the AI expertise gap that exists right now between these two stakeholders is what's causing the AI governance chasm. And the person who's best suited to bridge that gap is a product manager, because they can encourage expertise as well as sharing of ideas from this multi-stakeholder ecosystem to really build products and technologies responsibly.
Wow. This learning really resonates with me. Basically, make some tweaks for the process to shift from, teaching UI for the customer to the inaction, to basically teach a model to invite the customer to do an action. But at the same time, you both highlighted how central our product managers are in this change and in this revolution for their customer empathy, and also for bridging the communications among stakeholders and the businesses. This has been such a wonderful sessions. I personally learned a lot from you. I know the audience as well. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And thank you for being a great members and supporters for Women in Products.
Thank you so much
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Rana, Farah, Madhurima, Anna, Navrina, and to all those who have joined us live. I hope these talks have inspired you to think about AI in a new way, and also encourage a practical discussion of AI implementation, even how to get a product manager job in AI. I'd like to thank all of our speakers this morning for sharing their stories and their insights. It is an honor and a privilege to have them here. And a huge thank you to our sponsors for making this whole conference possible, especially our title sponsors, Facebook, Google, PayPal, and Upwork. These companies have provided important year-round engagement with women in product. We greatly appreciate their support for the conference, our community, and all of the work we do. Don't forget to visit them, all in the sponsor pavilion. A couple of quick reminders before we break here. First, the breakout sessions start at 10 a.m. on all 4 stages. You don't want to miss it. Second, there are also live interactive sessions beginning at 12:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, including one with our amazing keynote speaker, Rana, and all of our phenomenal panelists. Thank you, everyone, and have an amazing day 2 at the conference.